So this week our retro watch series is John Carpenter's Christine. Yes, we all are fans of John Carpenter. He made a lot of cool movies. This, I think, is one of his best movies. This came out in 1983, based on a Stephen King novel. I have not read it. Anthony, you read it, right?
Yes, I read it.
Okay, so I got questions for you since you actually know some of this shit. It's about a car, a haunted car, so to speak, and Arnie, the kid, buys this car and basically becomes obsessed with it, starts sort of becoming possessed by it. The car has some sort of supernatural presence inside it and starts manipulating Arnie, possessing him, starts dating the hot chick, and he becomes like a mean asshole, gets revenge on the bullies, and that's pretty much the story. Mm-hmm. Like I said, based on a Stephen King novel, and John Carpenter, he got this as a job because The Thing flopped. The Thing bombed at the box office. So he was like desperate for a job. And they say, hey, we got the Stephen King novel. Do you want to do this? He got this job doing Christine. And I think because he's such a great filmmaker, I think that's why the movie is so great.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I keep on looking at his shots and the way he frames things,
the
color of it, just everything of it is, and film, just real film. It's beautiful.
They don't make them like this anymore. This is old school filmmaking at its finest. There's no CGI. The way he lit, the setting. They had like 20 something different models of Christine. No CGI. He was messing with different like stocks of film to get a different look of film. Now, like I said, nowadays you'd fix that all in post. That's all digital. You could digitally colorize your film nowadays. He was using different film stocks to get those lighting effects, those bright lights when Christine, her headlights, you see those beams and those blue streaks across the film. He had to light that. Fire. Yeah, he had to expose that film perfectly to get that effect. Like you don't see this anymore. This is old school filmmaking. But yeah, let's talk about the beginning. Like, now this is what I'm talking about. I didn't read the book, but I hear things about the book. I hear that there's a different origin in the book. We're just talking about the movie. There is really no origin to Christine. You don't really know why this car is evil, why it has this like satanic presence in it. We don't know why. And I think that's a callback to Halloween, the original Halloween, and how Michael Myers was just known as the Shape. You didn't know what he was or why he was doing the things he was doing, why he wasn't dying. He was just like the thing from another world, this unstoppable force. And you didn't know why. He didn't explain that. And of course, the sequels explained he had a sister and a Halloween cult and all that other shit. But I'm talking about the original movie. It was more unsettling, and I think that works for this movie. We don't know why Christine is evil. He doesn't explain.
You don't have to.
No.
That's the cool part about how he does it too. The beautiful way, because he shows the first thing, and you wonder if it's an accident when the hood just comes down on that guy's hands, and then it's literally the same fucking day that dude goes in the car, sits there and smokes the cigar and dies
inside the car.
I mean, literally fucking dies in it. Like it's just cursed. And
they were all unworthy.
It's just this thing where they make you realize within 2 seconds.
Yeah, I remember seeing the trailer for this in a movie theater. I can't remember what movie it was for, but I saw the trailer to this movie before, because I actually saw this in the theater when I was a kid. My dad took me and my friend to see this, and I remember seeing the trailer to this movie, and it's really like, it shows like close-up shots of the body of the car, like the curves of the wheel wells, the fins on the back, the interior. It's really abstract. You don't really know what you're looking at, but you kind of look. It's kind of and there's narration, like she is sensual, she is jealous, she is passionate, and you hear this narration, and it's giving you the impression that this is a woman, but you keep seeing the trailer go by, and then you realize this is a car, and then it finally says this is Christine. She is a 1958 Plymouth Fury possessed by hell, and that's all it said, possessed by hell, and then you finally get that wide shot of the front of the car, and it's just sitting there, and then all of a sudden the lights turn on and vroom, it like drives at the screen, and it made me jump. I remember jumping at this trailer in the theater, and I'm like, whoa. But like I said, just that line, this car is possessed by hell, and that's all it said. That's all you needed to know, that it's just this haunted car, and you don't know why. So, and it said, and then when I finally heard that, it was from a Stephen King novel, because at the time, 8 years old, I did know who Stephen King was. I think because I watched Creepshow, so I did know who he was. So I wanted to see it, and then my dad took me to see it. Me and my friend, he took me. He didn't like it. He liked the music because he's an old man. He grew up in the 50s. He was a teenager in the 50s, so he loved the music. But he doesn't like cool shit like horror movies. But I loved it. I loved it. So
They need to bring back trailers like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Shit, that sounds like a motherfucking trailer.
But back to this thing, is like you don't know why this car is possessed by hell or whatever. But so this, like Anthony, you said you read the book. I heard like the previous owner is like, he's like a big character.
Yes.
He's like a dead guy driving around with Arnie in the passenger seat or something. I hear this shit going on.
Yes, and it's like the car and him are one.
Okay.
If I can remember correctly, and from what I understand, from what I remember, he was a real evil bastard, and his whole family ends up dying in the car, as far as I remember, his kids, his wife, everything, and he still keeps the car, and he's still in love with the car, and he becomes one with the car, and he's the ghost inside the car. And Arnie is literally having conversations with him in the car.
Yeah.
I remember that much.
Yeah.
Even though there's these differences with the book, I think with the time and the period of what this was made, John Carpenter did an excellent version of this story.
Yeah.
Because there's some things that just would have been impossible to do on film.
Well, he even said that. He's like, how are they going to pull this off? How are they going to pull Arnie talking to a dead guy? And he actually said, well, a year before Christine came out, or a couple years before, there was American Werewolf in London. And in that movie, David's character is talking to his friend, his dead friend, his dead zombie friend. And then he's like, okay, well, they already did that in that movie. And then he says, what if we just take all those scenes out? Because those scenes were in the script. There was supposed to be a dead guy talking to Arnie throughout the movie. And John Carpenter's like, well, they already did that in another movie. What if we just took that out? And then they did, and then that freed, like I said, it freed them up to keep it more suspenseful, to keep it more psychological and more unsettling. Because, once you do that, once you take the dead guy in the car, the zombie driver out, it becomes more psychological. It becomes more disturbing.
You just wonder if he's crazy.
Yeah, because
you don't know if Arnie's just going around killing people.
Yeah, and that's another thing, because those scenes where the car is driving around killing the bullies, the windows are all tinted. You can't see if there's anybody actually. For some of the movie, you're actually wondering, is Arnie actually in the car running down all these bullies? So it kind of leaves that open-ended, so that makes the movie more tense, because otherwise, okay, then it's the zombie driver in Ghostbusters, the taxi driver in Ghostbusters. It's that, you know what I mean? Once you put a face on it, then the tension is lost. You know what I'm saying? And by taking that element out, it keeps the movie more tense and full of suspense, which again I think works. But let's talk about Arnie. Now, Arnie.
I would like to talk about the relationship with him and his buddy right off the beginning.
Yeah, Arnie is a nerd. He's got one friend, his jock friend, Dennis, who's like he's on the football team. He gets the chicks. Arnie is a total nerd. Now I'm talking about a nerd back in the day. Not nerds now,
Yeah.
not nerds, hipsters wearing glasses, getting laid. Nerds are the bees. Yeah, no. Nerds are in vogue now. I'm talking about back then when nerds were not, we're uncool. The outcasts. He doesn't get laid. Dennis is we're going to get you laid this year, right? It's your senior year. You hear, it's, high school, buddies talking. And that's another thing. This was rated R. So you're seeing teenagers swear and use the F word and all that shit throughout the movie, which also gave it
acting normal.
Yeah, which gave it a gritty realism, especially back then, So yeah, he's this like nerd, but then once he gets Christine, then you see the transformation. You see he starts becoming more confident, more mean. Then he gets the fucking girl. He gets the chick. Whatever force that's in Christine starts manipulating him. And that's where, yes, the codependency starts. He becomes attracted to this car. So he's sexually attracted.
It's a drug.
He's sexually attracted to this fucking car. Throughout the movie, when he's building her, when he's repairing her, he sits in her in comfort. When Darnell, who's probably one of my favorite characters in this movie, when he gets yelled at,
he's the best character.
When he gets yelled at by Darnell, he sits in Christine. He turns on the radio, "You're mine." The old 50s rock songs start playing. He puts his head on the dash. He's caressing her. He's He's being comforted. He's being nurtured by this car. He's sexually attracted to this car to the point where the car becomes jealous. They are in love. So when
the car is empowering to him.
Yeah.
He's empowered from the car.
Yes. Once he gets the car fixed up, then he gets the chick. He gets the hottest chick in school. He's dating her. He's making out with her. That scene at the football where Dennis gets injured. Dennis is like, "What the fuck? Where's my nerdy little friend who doesn't get laid? Where is that?" And it was the power of Christine that gave him that. He sees them making out on this. Now Christine is in a pristine shape. She's looking beautiful. This is the piece of shit that he couldn't believe. He tried to talk Arnie out of not buying.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now this piece of shit car is in nice pristine shape. Arnie's looking all cool. He's making out with the hottest chick in school that turned down everybody. Everybody tried to ask her out, and she turned down everybody. But here's Arnie, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And then he gets he's on the football field. He gets injured, and again, that scene. It's almost like Dennis was entranced by Christine's power as well, like that. So to the extent that it distracted him, and that's how he got injured.
Well, let's talk about something that the book. It's something that happens in the book that isn't really made very clear in the movie as well. It probably wasn't important to tell the story of what the movie was going for and what was going on, but what's going on as soon as he pulls into Darnell's place, it's pretty much almost note for note, all the stuff that he says and everything close to the book. But the important part that you miss is that Darnell actually is a really cool guy, but Darnell's also a fucking gangster. He's a fucking mean ass gangster.
I was wondering,
and he falls in love, not in love, but like a son, he becomes kind of like an adult figure dad because he watches the obsession. He sees the obsession. He sees the addiction to the car.
Okay. And because Arnie, in the movie, Arnie is doing deliveries for Darnell, and I always wondered, what is he doing? They obviously had some sort of comfort.
He doesn't know exactly. This is how cool, as far as I can remember with the book, he doesn't know what he's doing. He knows that Darnell's a gangster and deals with gangster shit, and that whatever those guys at that table, when they're all those are all gangsters at that table, and they're doing that stuff. That's why he tells them to get the fuck out. He never tells Arnie what's going on. He just says, "Make this delivery for me, and I'll give you some money. Also, besides the parts, but this will help you get your car fixed." But the car but here's the key: is the car knows what's going on.
Oh.
So when he fucking finally pisses the car, when the car gets finally pissed off with fucking him, she's like, nah, you're out. Fuck all you motherfuckers.
Okay.
And that's that obsession with the car and him. They're both one. But I mean, the car still needs to feed. It feeds off of him, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So,
just back to Darnell. I think he steals the movie. That dude, that actor. I don't know his name, but he was in Great Outdoors.
yeah.
But I think
he's
got like all the cool lines. He's such a ball breaker, you know. He's such a like, you know, kid. If you sold it, if you can't polish a turd, yeah. He's watching Arnie fix up this car. He's like, hey, I knew a guy who owned a car like that. Son of a bitch killed himself in it, you know. So he knew. He actually knew the guy, the first owner, you know. But yeah, I mean, he's such a dick. He's such a ball breaker. He's got all the best lines. Like, kid, if you sold him that piece of shit, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, but that was after the parents thing too.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this movie, the cool thing that I find is I feel like all the relationships are real. You know what I mean? The parent thing, the not understand, the overbearingness of fucking parents.
That's the theme. Back to Arnie being a nerd. This movie's about coming of age. It's about the adolescent angst that we all feel as teenagers. You know, sort of rebelling against authority. You know, parents. You know, your boss, the cops, all that shit, the bullies, you know, when you're a teenager, it's just, for me anyways, everybody's kind of coming at you and poking at you all the time, and you end up, you know, listening to metal and punk and shit. but then back to, rock and roll. Rock and roll had this rebellious nature, you know. So that's that theme of Arnie sort of coming to age, puberty, he's growing up. Again, back to the sexual attraction. He's sexually attracted to this car. When the bullies come and wreck Christine, they trash Christine. They total Christine.
Totally.
Yeah. They totally fuck up Christine. She's in peace. She's totaled. But then that
I think in the book they literally shit in her.
Yeah.
Or on her.
There's a deleted scene.
Yeah.
There's a deleted scene where it shows that, where Moochie. I got something to say about Moochie. But
Moochie's an asshole.
Yeah, Moochie's a prick. But
the fat one or the skinny one?
Yeah, but the bully,
the fat one.
Yeah, the fat guy. The bullies totally fuck up Christine. But then that scene where he's like, "Show me," and Christine puts herself back together magically. Some evil force, she repairs herself in minutes, and that's that awesome scene, you know, where. You know,
and the music is fucking wild.
Yeah,
that scene
awesome
too.
soundtrack. Christine repairs herself. No CGI. He basically filmed her getting crushed and then ran it backwards. He filmed the car getting crushed, and then ran the film backwards. So that's you see Christine putting herself back together, and Arnie is watching her, and he's got a hard on. Arnie is totally sexually attracted to Christine in that moment. It's like she's doing a striptease for him. Lee is like the physical, like he can't fuck a car. And I think the only thing he was using Lee, the girl, for her body. Like all he wanted from Lee was sex, but he loved Christine. You know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's why the drive-in scene, you know, where they're making out, Christine's jealous. And that's where she starts choking. Lee starts that infamous scene, the choking scene at the drive-in. Arnie and Lee are making out in the backseat of Christine, and he gets out to fix the windshield wiper, and then Lee starts choking. It gets all bright. The song starts playing, and Lee almost dies. But that's just shows Christine's jealousy. Christine is jealous of Lee. And then you see Lee is jealous of Arnie and Christine. You know what I mean? It's like, you spend more time with that car than you do me. Typical, you know.
Well, if you've ever been a musician, you probably had the same thing with your guitar or your drums with your girlfriend. You spend more time with that thing when you do with me. I'm like, well, because it don't bitch at me. I don't have to listen to no bullshit.
Yeah,
This motherfucker's always here for me, no matter what.
Yeah,
I love my guitar.
Yeah, my drums don't complain.
Nope. Not even when you're beating them.
Yeah. I could slap the shit. Yeah, I could beat the shit out of my drums, and they don't fucking call the cops.
Oh no, we're in trouble now.
But yeah, that's again back to this whole obsession with Arnie and Christine. The actor Keith Gordon, that dude knocked it out of the ballpark with this
perfect
with his performance to start out as this nerdy kind of timid kid to telling his mom fuck you and grabbing his dad by his throat and shit. That's a
and slapped him.
Yeah. He put on a great performance. I mean, it's too bad.
Well, at that very beginning where he can't even get in his own fucking locker, and then he locks it on himself.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh my God, you feel so bad for this kid. And you realize, yeah, this kid, I've been that kid. I am that kid.
So let's talk about the bullies. Now, the bullies, back to Stephen King. Stephen King sort of set horror in a modern contemporary America. Where real life things became horror aesthetics in his stories. And bullies, like a lot of his stories have bullies in them. Stand By Me, of course, It. This movie, Christine, Carrie, she was getting bullied, So that's like a standard thing in Stephen King books. Yeah, the bullies. So Buddy Repperton and his gang. Buddy Repperton's this asshole. He pulls the knife on Arnie in the beginning of the movie. They're fucking with him, trying to beat him up. Dennis comes, of course, and helps him out, punches Buddy out. But Moochie, the fuck, man, he grabs his nuts.
That actually happens in the book.
He comes up behind him and literally gives him a reach around. And squeezes his nuts.
But he squeezes his nuts is what he's done.
Yeah, he squeezes his nuts.
And he puts him on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets...
Yeah, that's my question. Is Moochie, I just want to punch his face. He's just got a punchable face.
Moochie's the biggest... I think Buddy was kind of more like Henry Bowers. He was already older. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have been in the grade that he was hanging out. He was barely hanging on, and they finally got him out.
But Moochie, I think, is kind of creepy.
Moochie is fucked.
Yeah, Moochie, like I said, he grabs Dennis's nuts in the fight. He takes a shit on Christine's dashboard when they're fucking trashing her. And then, like I said, this is my question to you because I haven't read the book. The scene where he dies, where Christine chases him, before that, he gets out of a truck. He was hitching a ride from a trucker. I was thinking he was going to be more like Patrick from It. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
No one's like Patrick.
Okay.
Patrick's fucked.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was wondering. Is there like a weird sex criminal side to Moochie?
They're just following Buddy because they're just jerks. And you know what's funny is if you went to school during this time and even during the 80s, I don't know what it was like after the 90s. But that was normal. There were some kids that were just assholes, and that's just how it was.
Yeah. So Moochie,
and they knew they could get away with it to a certain degree, too.
Yeah.
Up until high school when people actually fought back.
Yeah, Buddy was an asshole, but Moochie seemed like a real creep to me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the music. The music in this movie. So, again, back to Bad to the Bone. This was the first time I ever heard that song. First
time ever used in a movie right there.
Yeah. George Thorogood was actually in this movie, but they cut him out because he couldn't act. He's in the junkyard. He was actually in the junkyard. And I guess he had lines and everything, but they said, okay, he sucks. Let's take him out of the movie. But they used this song. So this is the first time hearing this song, Bad to the Bone, which has been in so many movies now, Terminator and a bunch of movies now. But also the classic 50s rock. You had Buddy Holly, Little Richard, who just passed away. Rest in peace, Little Richard.
Rest in peace.
One of the funniest scenes in the movie is when the Little Richard song, when Dennis tries to break into Christine, he's trying to pop the door, and then he fucking
knocking.
and then Little Richard's song, like, keep a knocking but you can't come.
Can't come in. Yeah.
And it scares the shit out of him, and he runs out. That's like such a hilarious scene. You know, one of the best scenes of the movie. It's hilarious. You know, but yeah, the music. What's his name? What's the guy's name? Thurston Harris. Now back to Moochie. The scene where Moochie gets killed. When Moochie gets out of the truck, he hitched a ride from a truck driver. We don't know what he was doing with that trucker. I don't know. But he gets out. He gets out, and then he's like under the overpass, and then he sees Christine. This is after the bullies fucked her up, and she was trashed. Now she's all back together and looking pristine again. And he sees Christine and that song, the Thurston Harris song, the itty bitty pretty one, that.
Oh, yeah.
It's so creepy. That is such a creep. And then Christine starts creeping out towards him and shit, you know. And Moochie's like, "What the fuck? Hey, Cunningham, you ain't mad, are you?" And then of course the lights, her lights.
With that fun, that's even fucking. That's almost hilarious because you ain't mad, aren't you? Like, why would he be pissed that you just trashed his whole car and took a dump on it, motherfucker?
Took a shit on the dashboard.
Yeah.
When Darnell gets killed, when Darnell gets crushed, the seat crushes Darnell against the dashboard.
Yeah.
I hear I got a girl named Bodie Maroney.
Yeah.
Trolling them, man.
Yeah. So, okay, now to the ending. Finally, there's the big climactic fight between Christine and the bulldozer.
And that is different than the book.
I
won't get into that, but it's pretty damn different.
So the final climax, they meet Dennis. They like hotwire a bulldozer, and they meet inside Darnell's garage. Now, Darnell's garage was a major set in this movie. I guess half of it was the set for the movie. The other half was closed off, was the repair shop, because they were repairing all these cars. They had to match. They had all these stunt cars, so whenever Christine would like get in a wreck or something, you know, they had to get in another car and match the same dents. You know what I'm saying? The same damage. They had to match the same damage on every car because they used multiple cars. Again, old school filmmaking at its finest that you don't see anymore. So they had multiple cars with the same exact damage. So you had metal sculptors in there trying to, you know, match the damage on every car for every take because, you know, they were crashing these cars. So again, just the amount of work that went into the art of this fucking movie is just amazing as I'm watching it this time. But so yeah, there's this big battle where Dennis is inside the bulldozer and Christine is running around. They're trying to crush it, and that's where you see Christine sort of manifest itself into a monster because like the grill, it almost looks like teeth. You know, where she smashes and her grill is all fucked up and it looks like monster teeth. And it's almost like whenever she's revving her engine, it almost sounds like she's growling, like, you know. And then Arnie, of course, he's inside the car at one point and dies. He crashes and goes through the windshield and dies. Then it kind of, there's that moment where you think, oh, it's over. Arnie's dead. It's over. But then Christine comes back to life and starts trying to kill them again. Yeah.
Well, but no, that jump scene too, where she goes to look for Arnie and then he jumps and grabs her. Yeah.
And that's like
that shit made me jump.
And that's like the only scene with blood, I think. There's like no blood in this movie, except that where he crashes through the windshield and he's all fucked up and bloody, you know. So again, this movie's emphasizes more on terror than horror, the psychological suspense than blood and guts. You know what I mean?
I'd much rather.
Well, that's what it's a fucking real story. This is not just. This story is universal to everybody, and it's been able to drag you in because whoever you are, you've had some kind of obsession with something, whether it was a car, whether it was a skateboard, whether it was a bicycle, I'm going through the obsession right now with these two 1987 dynos that I'm rebuilding. It's an obsession. It's the same thing with my van. As soon as I saw it, you remember I told you, I said, well, as soon as I saw it in the little ad in Craigslist, I knew it was mine at that moment. And that thing, that identification, and you're the one who brought it up to me. You go, you just sound like Arnie. I was like, oh shit. And then you said, I'm calling her Christine. But that was that moment.
I do remember that. I actually do remember that.
And I remember I knew you were right. And that's when I realized how much I loved the van. And now that, the van was beat up when I got it. It's even more beat up.
Still beat up.
Runs.
But it still runs.
It still runs, and it still is, and I still love my van.
That's the Daigoro. That's the Daigoro van. That load. That's our van, our show van. When we go play shows, we load our gear in that thing.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that is this. That's this essence. Is obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's more. Love is not the correct word for it, but if anyone's ever obsessed over something and couldn't help themselves, then you know that feeling, and that's what it is. And it's even more wicked if you actually obsess over a woman, because it's something that gets really ill.
Well,
understands this movie.
Yeah, well, there is an addictive quality. I mean, even that scene with him and Dennis when he's talking about, do you know what love is? Has a voracious appetite. And he just explains his interpretation of what love is. And, if you keep feeding it, it can be a beautiful thing. And that's what we have. I'm talking about Christine, man. If you believe in that someone and they believe in you, you can do anything. Watch out, world. And he's like crazy. He's like crazy. Yeah.
But you understood that too, because it's that feeling when you have that obsession and because you watch him work. You watch him put it together. Every ounce of that fucking car. He is one with that car.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he puts it back together. And then, after a while, I'm sure Christine fell in love with him and started helping him.
It's his soul. The odd part is it's really a representation of his soul, because he's fucking pissed. He's pissed off at his parents. He's pissed off. He's pissed because everyone's fucked with him his whole fucking entire life. And then he finally explodes.
There's a deleted scene. It happens, I think, the night I think it happens either right before he buys Christine or right after the bullies or whatever, or after that night of Christine. It's Arnie. It's in the beginning of the movie. They cut it out, but Arnie starts breaking down and crying, and Dennis has to hug him, and Arnie's like, "I'm gonna get those motherfuckers. I'm gonna show them." And Dennis is like, it's okay, man, it's fine, and has to comfort him. I think it's right before he gets out of the car, or right after he drops Christine off at Darnell. It's somewhere around then. But Arnie finally has a breakdown. He had a shitty first day of school. He got bullied. He bought this car. His parents won't let him keep it in their driveway, and Arnie just kind of has a breakdown in front of Dennis, and Dennis kind of holds him and comforts him, and it just shows. It's a really beautiful scene, but it shows that Dennis actually cares about him.
Yes.
And it also shows where back to Arnie was this little timid, weakling in the beginning of the movie, and then he becomes this badass asshole.
And I think that's more. I think that's one thing that's really shown in the book, is that that Dennis and him are really fucking real homies. See, no matter how opposite end of the spectrum they are, that they actually give a fuck about each other. Because I think in the book, if I can remember, and it's been a while, so some people might have to clarify on this or not, but I think he knows kind of that Dennis and those two are kind of becoming a couple, but he doesn't really kind of care, because he really loves Christine. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. That's my boy. Fuck it. That's the essence that I got out of the book. I could be wrong, but.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, you got to give it up for Dennis. I mean, because he was like a true ass friend and shit, to him, even through all his toxicity or whatever,
Well, he cared
about him.
Yeah, and then there's back to the deleted scenes. There's some more scenes of him and Arnie when Dennis is in the hospital with his broken leg, and Arnie comes and visits, and there's a scene where Arnie is signing Dennis's cast, his broken leg cast, and then he sees Lee had signed it. He goes, was Lee here? And he's like, oh yeah, and then he like gets in Dennis's face, and Dennis is all like fucked up and got his, he's all laid up in the hospital bed, and like Arnie like gets in his face and shit. And it's like a really intense scene,
Yeah.
Just again showing what a great performance this guy put on. The guy who played Arnie, it's a great performance. Everybody, Harry Dean Stanton. I mean, there's some really good performances in this fucking movie.
It's a great fucking movie.
Yeah. So they finally, Arnie dies, the bulldozer scene, they crush Christine in a cube. They totally crush her up, like they do in a junkyard. The movie ends where it suggests that she's about to put herself back together. It goes it zooms into Christine's crushed up body, and you see the bumper or the fender start moving by itself. And then that movie ends, and it just suggests that evil force is still there, and she will repair herself and all that, and will come back. Now, what I noticed this time, while Christine is being crushed by the bulldozer, the song "Rock and Roll Is Here to Stay" is playing. Yeah. So here's this old 1958 Plymouth Fury being crushed. Rock and roll is here to stay. Blah blah. That song is playing. At the end, the last line of the movie, Lee goes. She hears the Little Richard song playing, and then it shows the guy,
rock and roll.
the guy walking with the boom box, and he's listening to the radio. And
they got all scared. They thought it was her.
Yeah, they thought it was Christine's radio coming back on, but it was just the guy holding a boom box. And then Lee goes, "I hate rock and roll," and I'm like, "What the fuck's her problem? Fucking square? Like what?" Like what the fuck? Lee's a fucking square, man.
Well, she never really loved Arnie anyway.
She's a cube, man. She's a fucking she's got us on the train to Squaresville. I'm like, what's her problem? Like, she don't like rock and roll. And then it dawned on me, this is the 80s, the early 80s. This is a change in the culture. And that's when it hit me. Okay, you have her saying she hates rock and roll. You have Christine getting crushed by a bulldozer while Rock and Roll Is Here to Stay is playing. I'm wondering, was John Carpenter making a statement about the changing of culture with the 80s? The same way Quentin Tarantino was doing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? The culture shift? Because the 80s, everything changed. Everything, the technology changed, music, everything went synthesizers, rock and roll changed, even Huey Lewis, they say the heart of rock and roll is still beating, I looked at Risky Business. I want that good
what was
time
it?
Of
Isn't there like a Bob
roll.
Seger song like that?
Yeah, Bob Seger. I want that old time rock and roll.
Time of rock and roll.
Yeah, so
the kind of music just soothes the soul.
Yeah.
Or what was it? Also, Billy Joe had a fucking song too. Oh.
It's still rock and roll to me.
To me, yes.
Yeah.
And
that
one's even more, that one's even more about music and the idea of what people think is cool. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's where I start dying. I wonder, and John Carpenter, he was a musician. He's like all his movies. He scored this movie as well. He was in a band. He played music. And I wonder if he was commenting on that, if he was commenting on the culture shift of the 80s. Because you have, the 80s, you had the rise in the yuppies. You had corporate takeover, Wall Street, greed is good. Music, it went electronic, synthesizers, all that shit. And then you have that scene, the bulldozer crushing Christine. Christine, she's an old 58 Plymouth Fury made in Detroit. This is middle
class.
Yeah, she's like representing the golden era of rock and roll, of American industry, the car industry that was American, American culture, the greatness, the peak of American culture, how rock and roll and cars and everything influenced the world. That's when that's what that. I was wondering about that as it's getting crushed. Oh, Christine is getting crushed. Is he saying that this culture shift is crushing? That the times are changing, and that great era in American history is being lost to corporations, to corporate greed, to poverty, to poverty. That what because the 80s everything changed. Crack, poverty. It like 70s and 80s the fucking society took a downturn. You know what I mean? And I wonder if that's the statement Carpenter was making. That's just like this time watching it. I was like, wow. Especially when it really dawned on me. She's like, I hate rock and roll. I'm like, what's her fucking problem? Fucking preppy ass bitch. Yeah. Yeah.
Just wanted to be seen in the car. That's all.
Yeah. Oh. Go listen to Depeche Mode, you fucking bitch, or fucking Wham or whatever.
Thompson Twins.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I got out of this time. Otherwise, I had a great time watching it. It's been a couple years. It is one of my favorite movies, and I do watch this every so often. But this time, I really paid attention and like, wow, Anybody got anything else?
Oh man, I think that just sums it all up. I mean, I just had a really good time watching it this time because, like I said,
for me the movie, as being I was a kid, 80s baby. For me, that movie, and it's still great. It's how deep it is now as an adult watching it. But for me back then, just the fucking car on flames, flying through the dark, the night and shit. I mean, that shit, that movie was just dope. You know what I mean? That's all I can really say, man.
And back to John Carpenter. I mean, like I said, his body of work, he's got an awesome body of work. And this is one of his great movies that he's made, and they don't make them like this anymore. People take for granted what motherfuckers did to make movies back in then.
Well, let's talk about this. This is really his peak. They didn't understand it. I mean, He just came off the thing. He does Halloween. Well, I can't remember what he did second.
He did Halloween. Then he did Escape from New York, I think.
Escape from New York, yeah.
And I think that was okay. That did well. The Thing is what bombed. The Thing bombed, and they're like,
The only reason The Thing bombed is because it came out at the wrong time when E.T. was coming out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that probably wouldn't have bombed. And now that when you talk about, I think personally, I think it's his best movie he ever made.
Yeah.
It's literally my favorite movie. So it's that thing where you kind of watch this guy, and he's just on fire at this time
because he made The Thing.
He puts out The Fog.
Yeah. Oh yeah, The Fog came out. The Fog came out around. I think that came out before Escape from New York.
So we're talking Big Trouble, Little China.
Yeah. So we had The Thing bombed. Then he made this movie, and this movie was successful. This movie made money. This allowed him to do Starman, and Starman blew. That made a lot of money. People liked that. That was a critical success and box office success.
Because that was friendly alien bullshit. That was that whole 80s thing.
And then he made Big Trouble in Little China after that, and that's when he was on fire. And then by the time he got to Prince of Darkness, and then he started, kind of plateauing after a while. But, for those early to mid 80s, he was fucking, anything he was doing was pretty much gold. The success, after successful movies, he started making, that's why they allowed him to do shit like Big Trouble in Little China and just throwing him money to do all those effects and stuff like that.
And Big Trouble didn't make the box office either.
Yeah, that was released right when Aliens came out. So yeah, 86 was a hard year. 86 was a great year for movies. A lot of cool movies came out, but the competition, Aliens buried everything that summer. Second Aliens movie was like the big box office, and I remember that time. I remember that year. That's probably the best year of movies ever. 86. But yeah, I mean, They Live. He ended up doing They Live and shit like that. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
Which is great.
Which is also great. Which has now become another. Basically, all his movies are now considered classics. They might have not have done well at the time they came out in, but they're all considered classics now. And like I said, he's one of the greatest directors of all time.
And for good reason.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, Christine, check it out. It still holds up. It's a great fucking movie. One of Carpenter's best. And yeah, they don't make them like this anymore. So yeah, we're going to wrap it. That's a wrap on this episode. Thank y'all for listening. This is the Geek SAVZ, the Native Nerds podcast. Check us out on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. Leave us a comment and messages. We've actually getting messages from some cats lately. Send us some questions. We'll give you a shout out on our show. All that shit. We'll talk about what you want to talk about. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in. This is the Geek SAVZ. This is E-Dub.
Fat T.
Anthony.
Extra cheese, hold the mail.